The prisoners had started playing a deadly game for their freedom. Realizing what had happened, they regretted ever joining this game. Maybe it was a huge mistake. It had all begun when 11 people, including some prison inmates, signed up for a mysterious game that offered them freedom. Among them were also 2 Mafia members. The game seemed simple. The civilians had to identify the Mafia and vote them out, while the Mafia had to pretend to be civilians to survive. But there was one horrifying rule. If the players voted out an innocent person, that person would be brutally executed. Everyone knew that losing meant real death, yet they still played, because the winner would receive a reward so huge that it could change their life forever. The players were seated in a high-tech room. Soon, drones flew in and tattooed their wrists with special marks indicating whether they were Mafia or civilian, though no one could see anyone else's mark. Then, the game master introduced each participant. The first player was Luka, an 85-year-old billionaire gambler. He was addicted to betting, so much that he once gambled his own life. He used advanced medicine to stay young. His grandson was eagerly waiting for him to die so he could inherit his fortune, but Luka had already decided that if he died, his entire wealth would go to charity, not to his family. The second player was Alan, a man in the final stage of cancer with only 3 months to live. He thought, if I'm going to die anyway, I might as well earn something for my family. His wife tried desperately to stop him. She wanted him to spend his last days with them, but Alan refused. Next were 2 prison inmates, the third and fourth players, who didn't join for money but for freedom. The government had a deal with the game. If a prisoner won, they'd be released, and the prize money would go to the state. After introductions, the game master announced, "Now, it's time to find the Mafia." Everyone claimed to be innocent. "You'll have just 10 minutes to decide and vote one person out," he said. The game began. Family members and friends of contestants watched live, hearts pounding. The first player refused to vote anyone out. Then a woman named Mariya accused Killian of being the Mafia. Peter agreed with her, saying, "Yes, he's the one." But another contestant recognized them and revealed the truth. Mary was once a famous dancer, and Peter had been her biggest fan. A storm accident had left Mary paralyzed, and she'd lost both her legs. Since then, she had been terrified of rain and lightning. Doctors told her that with artificial legs, she could dance again, but the treatment was too expensive. That's why she joined the game. Peter had sold many of his belongings to help her and joined a game, risking his life to be with her. Seeing that Mary had a supporter who might protect her, the others voted against Mary, fearing she could manipulate the game. Mary was devastated. Watching her despair, Peter confessed that he was the Mafia, hoping to save her, but it was too late. The voting was over. Mary revealed the tattoo on her hand. She was innocent, but now her death was sealed. Her chair rose and disappeared into smoke. Peter tried to reach her, but he was tied to his seat. Mary was sent into a storm, her worst fear. Terrified, she ran until she reached a cliff above a river. She decided to jump, but just as she leaped, a lightning bolt struck her mid-air, killing her instantly. Even in the real world, her body vanished, absorbed into the glowing sphere. The game master's voice echoed. Night 1 has ended. Then, drones began flying above the remaining players, scanning for their next victim. The next round began. This time, everyone voted against Butcher, but he was innocent too. Now, it was his turn to die. Furious, Butcher began cursing everyone. His chair lifted off the ground as he struggled to break free, but he couldn't escape. The chair disappeared into the black smoke. Inside the smoke, the game master discovered that Butcher had no fear. To find out what scared him the most, they ran a psychological test, and it revealed that he hated being surrounded by stupid people. So, his punishment was designed differently from the others. Inside the vortex, Butcher found himself sitting near a well, surrounded by 2 men who came to kill him. The audience watching the show began cheering him on, shouting for him to fight back. The 2 fighters attacked Butcher mercilessly. He was struggling to defend himself, but he quickly came up with a clever move. He grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it into their eyes, then smashed a bottle over them. He kept hitting them again and again, but no matter how many times he killed them, they kept coming back to life. Still, Butcher didn't give up. He kept fighting until, finally, he defeated them both. His fellow players back in the prison cheered in relief. But just when Butcher thought he had survived, he tripped over a stone, fell, and his head split open. That was the end of him. The game master reset the timer and announced, "Now it's time to vote for the Mafia again." Meanwhile, Peter was still furious over Mary's death. He said Butcher deserved it. A few moments later, the game master announced that the next voting round was about to begin. But this time, the players had only 8 minutes. Suddenly, Konstantin spoke up. He claimed that he knew exactly who the Mafia was. It was revealed that, since childhood, Konstantin had been able to see the future. He always knew when he'd fail a test, when a girl would betray him, and so on. Eventually, people began calling him the Black Messenger. As an adult, he appeared on parapsychological shows and even advised the government during wars, helping them strategize for victory. His greatest fear was dying old. He didn't want to grow old and helpless. Now, Konstantin pointed his finger at Peter and said, "He's the Mafia." Peter snapped back. "If you could really see the future, then why didn't you stop Mary from dying? Even though she was innocent." Konstantin smirked and said, "Because I want all the prize money for myself. I don't share with civilians." That made Peter realize Konstantin was lying. He must be the real Mafia. Peter voted against Konstantin. Eli and Laura also voted for Konstantin, but the rest voted for Peter. In the end, it was revealed that Peter was innocent, meaning Konstantin had lied. The game master began Peter's fear simulation test. When asked what scared him most, Peter said, "Nothing, except losing Mary." But when the psychologist pressed him further, Peter remembered that, as a child, he used to have an intense fear of water. As soon as his chair entered the black vortex, Peter found himself in the middle of the ocean, sitting alone in a small boat. Panicking, he started rowing frantically, trying to reach an island in the distance. Suddenly, his boat began leaking. He tried to cover the hole, but the shark would cut his hand open. His blood mixed into the water, and soon, sharks appeared, drawn by the scent. Terrified, Peter started rowing again, but water was quickly filling his boat. One shark leapt out of the water. Peter struck it with an oar, killing it. The other sharks began feeding on its body. Taking advantage of the chaos, Peter jumped into the sea and started swimming toward the island. But as he swam closer, he realized the island was disappearing. Moments later, the sharks turned toward him and devoured him alive. As Peter took his final breaths, he imagined Mary's spirit reaching out for him. With a faint smile, he whispered her name, and then he was gone. Before night fell in the game, the players were given another chance to vote someone out. But this time, they only had 6 minutes. That's when we were introduced to Walter, a 45-year-old military officer who had fought countless wars for his country. After everything he'd been through, he was emotionally shattered. He joined the game hoping fate would decide whether he deserved to live or die. During one of his missions, Walter had made a terrible mistake that led to the deaths of many of his soldiers. When he saw Ivan's case on TV, he immediately accused him of being a child killer. Then we learned about Ivan's past. He was once just an ordinary student. One night, while drinking with friends, he got into a car accident. The car was speeding when it crashed. 2 of his friends died instantly. Ivan and the driver somehow survived, saved by a woman who happened to be on the road. But later, in court, the driver's parents blamed Ivan to protect their son, claiming he was the one driving. Ivan was sent to prison, and his greatest fear became dying behind bars. During the game, Ivan told everyone he was innocent, that he'd been framed. Then he said to Laura, "I think I've seen you somewhere before." But Laura denied it, saying they didn't know each other. Soon, Laura accused Walter of being the Mafia, and Walter accused her in return. The argument got heated. Eventually, Walter voted for Laura, and she voted for Walter. Then Luca, Ivan, and Alan also voted for Walter. Furious, Walter shouted at everyone. When Konstantin finally voted against him too, the outcome was sealed. Walter had the majority of votes. Moments later, it was revealed that Walter was actually a civilian, meaning both Mafia members were still in the game. As Walter's chair sank into the black vortex, he was transported back to the moment of his greatest mistake. He tried to warn his men about an incoming enemy attack, but was already too late. The enemy surrounded his unit from all sides, and his soldiers were slaughtered like insects. The nightmare grew worse as the walls around him disappeared, revealing more enemies charging toward him. They began killing his soldiers one by one with brutal precision. Walter fought his way out and started firing back wildly. But seeing his comrades die and the battlefield crumble around him, he realized his end was near. Finally, the enemies riddled him with bullets. Walter was dead. A few moments later, the game world darkened once again. Another evening had fallen, and it was time for the next target. The drone flew over the players and chose Laura. Then her story was revealed. Laura once had a beautiful life, a home, a great job, and a loving family. But she fell victim to drug addiction, which ruined everything. Her condition worsened day by day, and she pushed away anyone who tried to help her, even her husband. Soon after, her son died, and her husband left her. Now, she lived alone, consumed by regret. She admitted that her greatest fear was heights. For 8 years, she hadn't stepped outside her home. But one night, while she was standing by the roadside, she witnessed a horrific car accident, the same one that involved Ivan and his friends. That's when it was revealed that Laura was the woman who saved Ivan's life. Later, the driver's parents forced Laura to lie in court, giving false testimony testimony against Ivan. Hearing this, Ivan was shocked, but instead of anger, he forgave her. The truth had finally come out. He was innocent. Soon, the game master announced that Laura was also a civilian. As her chair was pulled toward the black vortex, she turned to Ivan and said softly, "I'll be praying for your victory." Inside the vortex, Laura found herself on an airplane, flying straight into a dark, violent storm. The black cloud struck the plane with massive force. The turbulence grew worse. Parts of the plane began to break apart. The ceiling caved in, and an air hostess tried to fasten Laura's seatbelt, but then a wave of darkness snatched her away. Piece by piece, the plane disintegrated midair, and finally, Laura too fell into the jaws of death. After that, the players were given 4 minutes to choose the next person. Konstantin immediately named Ivan, which started an argument among everyone. During the chaos, Alan realized that Kieran and Kate might actually know each other. Kieran claimed that Konstantin was the Mafia, but Ivan voted for Alan. At that moment, tensions rose among the players. Konstantin, Alan, and Luka voted for Ivan, while Kate and Kieran voted for Konstantin. Alan voted for Eli. According to the rules, the chosen player must receive the majority of votes, so it was announced that another round of voting would take place. This time, Luka changed his vote to Konstantin, while the other 4 voted the same as before. To everyone's shock, Konstantin voted for himself, something that had never happened on the show before. In the end, it was revealed that Konstantin was indeed the Mafia. When he entered the black sphere, he found himself walking down a staircase. Suddenly, a man bumped into him and called him Grandpa. Hearing that word filled Konstantin with rage, but soon he began to cough violently. Then, several mirrors appeared in front of him, showing his reflection rapidly aging. It became harder and harder for him to walk down the stairs. As he approached what seemed to be his final moments, Konstantin suddenly burst into laughter and said, "I cheated." The truth was that he wasn't afraid of dying from old age at all. To him, it was the most beautiful way to die. Eventually, another evening fell, and the drone began selecting the next player. It chose Ivan, but soon it was revealed that he, too, was a civilian. Watching him go brought tears to Kate's eyes. Ivan said he wasn't afraid to die because now it had been proven that he was innocent. Before leaving, he told his mother how much he loved her and apologized for not being a better son. When Ivan entered the black sphere, he found himself in a prison where guards were escorting him to his execution. In his mind, he tried to imagine being on a beach with his mother, but suddenly the guards opened fire, riddling him with bullets. Now, only 4 players were left, and one of them was the Mafia. This time, they had only 2 minutes to vote. A heated argument broke out again. Alan said that Kieran and Kate were boyfriend and girlfriend. Then we see Kieran's story. Kieran was a young man who joined the game on a dare from his friend. One day before the game started, he met Kate. For some reason, Kate immediately felt a deep connection with him and shared all her secrets. She told him that she was terrified of heights, deserts, and dreams. She also revealed that she had grown up in an orphanage, which made her feel that there was no one in the world who would ever protect her. Well, the truth was that neither Kate nor Kieran knew they would meet again in the game. The argument among the players went on for quite a while, and when the time finally ran out, the computer chose the next player, Kate. Her chair automatically started moving toward the black sphere. But just then, Kieran jumped and grabbed onto her chair, determined that they would die together. As soon as they entered the sphere, they found themselves standing on a glass floor surrounded by a terrifying storm. Each step they took caused the glass beneath them to crack. Suddenly, Kieran ran toward Kate, and the two began running together as the glass shattered rapidly behind them. Then, the ground beneath their feet gave way, and they fell straight into a dark desert. There, they saw a glowing triangle of light atop a rock and decided to follow it. As they moved forward, the rocks behind them began transforming into giant snakes that chased after them. They ran as fast as they could until a horrifying monster appeared in front of them. This monster was actually a manifestation of Kieran's fear, his fear of losing Kate. Kieran told Kate to hide while he attacked the monster by throwing stones. When the creature stepped into the light triangle, its body began to burn. That's when Kieran noticed another glowing triangle hanging around the monster's neck. He quickly climbed up its leg, grabbed the triangle, and redirected the light toward the monster, burning it completely to ashes. After that, they found a stone with faces carved into it, and one of its eyes already had a triangle embedded in it. They placed the monster's triangle into the other eye, and suddenly, the stone began to move. A new path opened up, leading straight to a house. When they entered, Kate realized it was the same orphanage where she grew up. She saw a vision of her mother handing her over to another woman and leaving. It was then revealed that Kate's greatest fear was discovering why her parents had abandoned her. Kieran reminded her that none of it was real, and that she was not to blame for what her parents did. Suddenly, everything around them began to shatter, and the two of them found themselves standing before the game master. This meant that only one civilian and one Mafia player remained. Just before announcing the winner, a commercial break played. Afterward, the game master revealed that Konstantin had been working for him all along, and that he had used Kieran and Kate to find a way to end the game. He explained that they were still trapped inside a dream, but the audience had grown tired of watching players die. So he decided to show them Kieran and Kate's love story instead. Finally, the game master thanked them for participating and released them from the game. Sometime later, we see Alan returning home and telling his family that he was the last Mafia, meaning he had won the game. He lived not just 3 months, but 10 months longer. Meanwhile, Luke also made it out alive, but he didn't receive any money. Out of disappointment, he disinherited all his grandchildren and donated his entire fortune to Kate's orphanage. Elsewhere, Ivan's mother kept receiving flowers every day, symbolizing that she wasn't the only one mourning his death. The entire country was grieving with her. And with that, the movie ends.